Hello, my name is Joseph Wilkins, and this video is going to be about suicide. I have not, in any stretch of the imagination, looked forward to making this video, but I have thought about it over the years, and in those years, I just see more and more people taking their own lives. It is really a tragedy in our society that so many people do this. And unfortunately, in my own life, I've known several people to commit that act. So in all the discussions I see about suicide, and unbelievable, there's 14-year-old children committing suicide. This is absolutely beyond belief. But there's something I have not seen really spoke about, addressed, whatever you want to call it. And I think I can add some insight to it and help, if I can help somebody with this video, that's exactly what I mean to do here. So let me start by saying this. When I was much younger, there was a fellow called Ronnie Hop, and Ronnie was from Akron. And his life was somewhat a difficult one. His father was what they call a chronic alcoholic that had DTs, they called them, tantrums, where he would act just insanely, actually peeled the wallpaper off his bedroom wall with his fingernails. Imagine being raised there. But he was a quiet guy. He was an introverted type of guy. Wasn't the loudmouth rock and roller that the neighborhood usually would produce. And one day I heard that he had got up in the morning and shot himself twice in the head. Twice. I didn't believe it when I first heard it. How do you shoot yourself twice in the head? But later on, in the years to follow, I found out that he was not the only one to accomplish that horrible act. Then I knew a guy named Steve. And Steve, he had a bad chain of events. He was a nice guy, but through some horrible accident, he lost the sight in his left eye. And he wore a patch. And not long after that, I guess because of that infirmity, he wrecked his car, which he really loved his car. And then his girlfriend said something of the nature that she wasn't going to be riding around in no wrecked car with some one-eyed son of a gun. Well, it wasn't much longer after that. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, Joe, you want to go see Death Wish? Charlie Bronson's got a new movie out at the drive-in." I said, "Yeah, I like Bronson. Come pick me up." Well, when he didn't pick me up, I figured he just went and got a buzz or got drunk or something. Well, the next day, I called for Steve, and I heard that line I've heard before. We lost him last night. Nice way to put it. We lost him last night. I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, he went to the movie just like he told you he was. But halfway during the movie, someone seen a flash inside the car, and he had shot himself in the heart with a pistol." Homicide and suicide, when they pull people out of this life like that, it's a shock. It's a shock wave that goes, you're not ready for it. You'll never be ready for it. I knew a fellow named Larry Sales. They called him Crazy Larry Sales. He calls me up one day, and he was looking for my brother. He was more of a friend of my brother age-wise than I was. My brother, wild man. Anyway, he said, "Is your brother around?" And I said, "No, I don't know where he's at." He said, "Look, why don't I pick up a six-pack and come over, and we'll have a beer together," which was unusual. First time he'd made this type of offer to me. And I said, "Yeah, I got some hot dogs over here, and we could cook up some hot dogs and, have a beer." Well, he didn't show up either. Found out he took a hose off the vacuum cleaner and turned his Buick Roadmaster into a gas chamber and killed himself. My brother's son-in-law Great guy named Tommy. Good guy. Great guy. Big, strong kid. Good natured. Got divorced. His wife said, well, I'm divorcing you and taking the kids. He hung himself in the garage. And he had his whole life ahead of him. Had his whole life ahead of him. I worked with a guy named Josh Barton in Virginia Beach. Likeable fellow. He was a sales guy. You know, sales guys get along with him professionally. He had a saying, he'd go, oh, things are brutal. But for the most part, he seemed like an easygoing guy. But he fell madly in love with some girl that worked in our office and got upset over something, and the cops came and arrested him for being a horse's ass. And but 3 days later, he hung himself. I can still see him, and it's been many years. Just before I left Norfolk, I was staying in a house where a young man, about 18 years old, named Chris, stayed with his fiancée and her little boy, about 3 years old. I walk out the door, and the entire block is cut off by police. I've never seen so many cops in my life. And I looked over in a car that Chris owned, this young guy, and he was slumped over the seat. He had shot himself in the heart with a pistol. And I'm standing there, and I'm looking at that. And I said, what in the world? His father showed up on the scene, unfortunately, and that man was just completely destroyed by this. But I'll tell you one thing they all had in common. Can you guess what it was? Okay. Not one of them, not one, mentioned a word to anybody about anything of that nature. And I got to thinking about that. Yeah, but Larry said he's on his way over. Steve says, I'm on my way over. I don't think any of these people got up in the morning and said, you know what, at 3 o'clock I'm going to shoot myself in the chest. So what the hell happens? It was something I could not relate to or have the intellectual depth to internalize a theory that would be raised to the muster of credibility in that area. So when I was 28 years old, after years of drinking and drugs and just being the recipient of childhood schizophrenia, and I'll kind of set the idea of what I'm about to tell you. When I was 28 years old, I was standing out on a beautiful day in summer. I was in Ohio, and my mind was just so fatigued. And I think a fatigued mind is what kills most people. That, what I'm about to mention. If your mind never gets a break, I mean, if you drink every day, take drugs every day, you live a violent life, that gets to you after a while. You just don't think straight anymore. I hate to say it, but I had the social graces of a caged animal at one time. I wasn't always the refined gentleman that you see before you today. But that day, within moments, I decided that my own death was the answer to my problems. Oh, why didn't I think about this before? I don't remember the act. I do, but I don't. Took a blade, opened up my veins. Goodbye, everybody. Trust me when I say when I got up in the morning, I didn't say to myself, well, around 2 o'clock, I'm going to kill myself. Never crossed my mind. I didn't want to die. I didn't. But for some reason, the madness, the insanity of the moment. It was all so surreal. I did it. I'm bleeding. I remember hitting the ground, and I said, "Well, this is it. You know, I will never take another breath. This is not what I wanted." I look back on it and I think, what took over? What mental storm? What mental storm was it that drove me to such an insane, self-destructive act? It boggles my mind. And I was so sincere in the attempt. I nicked a nerve here. So I got some numbness in my left hand here uh, as a result of that attempt. A guy named Bob Reitnauer lives in Akron, Ohio. Vietnam veteran, heard my body fall, and he knew how to treat my wounds, called an ambulance, and saved my life. So he saved my life. If what I've gone through, if what I experienced, what I can share with you, what's the old saying, if it just saves one life? Well, now let me explain to you why taking your life is not going to be a decision that you make and carry out 2 days from now. You're going to get in a situation that you think is insufferable, unescapable, claustrophobic. It's crushing you in every area. You just can't breathe. And this seems like that flash of do it, hang yourself, shoot yourself, whatever the hell it is, to escape that situation. But really what it is just a fatigued mind, a spirit. The drugs, the booze, the whatever is driving you crazy, right? I look back, I am 69 right now. So I have lived past that by 41 years. Now listen to me. If you're having a bad time in your life, you just got divorced, you're heartbroken, you're heartsick, you don't think there's any way out of your misery and any of that, there is. And I wouldn't say that to you if I really didn't mean it. When I was a young guy, I used to say, wouldn't it be nice if your birth certificate came with an owner's manual? Well, now that it has, you can look up neuroscience and psychology and philosophy, and you go, Joe, I'm a drug addict. I ain't gonna look up no philosophy. Well, if you're not getting out of life what you want, at least understand what's happening to you. I like to think I was special, Guess what? I'm not. I'm like every other person. If I think a certain way, if I exhibit certain behavior, I'm going to get certain results. Nothing I'm thinking or doing hasn't been done before by many, many people and been documented and commented on and why all this happens. Me, I was a drunk. I wasn't a drug addict, but I took a lot of drugs, mostly psychedelics and amphetamine. Never liked cocaine, or heroin. Too dangerous on that. But the alcohol was really the driving force for me for a long time. And you just can't pickle your brain day in and day out and think negative thoughts and be involved in things you shouldn't be involved in without some kind of it's going to harm you in the long run. It's going to put you under so much stress and so much, it just sucks the life right out of you, literally. Literally. So what I'm saying to you, until all those other people that I told you killed themselves, I said, how in the world could you do that? I'd never do that. I would never do that, no matter how bad things got. But that wasn't true. So what I'm thinking is the reason I called this suicide as a trapdoor, I think it's just that. I think you build the scaffolding in your brain, right? And you might be heading that way, but when you finally kill yourself, it's not something that you planned on. It's not something that you thought, well, you see people commit suicide in the movies. What was that lady's name? I don't know. She took a shot of liquor and walked down in the ocean, made killing yourself looking so romantic. Well, it's not. It's a craziness. It's an insanity. I'll tell you right now. When I look back on the years that my parents were alive after that, 30 years, okay, I, 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 I just, it make my blood run cold when I thought about my mother and father. If I had been successful that day, I would have ruined them, just like Chris ruined his father when I seen that man just crumple to the street. It's a selfish thing to do, for sure, but you won't see it that way if you do it. As a matter of fact, it will happen in your mind. It'll be like surreal. It's not like you're really doing it. I believe this is what is not addressed about this problem. If you don't want to kill yourself, then you got to be aware of what things can bring you to kill yourself. The claustrophobic, I can't escape, it's horrible, all that. And know that you're building a trapdoor. When you think it's other people that kill themselves, I don't know how many people I just mentioned. I believe it's seven, 6 or 7 people, that I've known personally. I've known other people to kill themselves, but I didn't know them personally. They weren't friends of mine. I didn't work with those people. These people I did. And I'd like to have them all back. And I'm sure they'd all like to be back. That's the point I'm trying to make. So if you don't think suicide can happen, you ask yourself some questions. How happy am I? Okay, do I feel desperate? Do I feel like I'm in a cage? Do I feel like I just can't change anything and I'm hopeless and I'm helpless and I can't breathe anymore? And, why would these things lead to suicide? Right? Because once you hear them like that, you go, well, yeah, that I can see where that could lead to suicide. What I'm trying to do, and I'll be 70 years old January, I'm going to share this with you on this video. If I can, I know this sounds corny, but if one person listens to me ramble on about this and goes, you know what, Joe's right. Maybe I ought to keep my eye out because I've been feeling pretty bad lately. Maybe I ought to keep up with this trapdoor this guy's telling me I'm building. And if I can keep one guy, one lady off that trapdoor, then, I didn't want to make this video because I've just told you things about myself that people who have known me my whole life past that time have never heard. Matter of fact, since I'm hoping none of them would need this kind of advice, I'm surely not going to bring their attention to this video. This is for you people who, if there's any chance you're in those kind of situations and you say to yourself, oh no, never me, I'd never kill myself. Well, I think there's something you need to know, and that is I don't think anyone who kills themselves plans it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some that do, but the 7 people I personally knew, you couldn't, it was, I'll be over at noon. I'll pick you up for the movies, that kind of thing. You think he told me on the phone, I'll pick up a 6-pack of beer and we'll eat some hot dogs at your place, so I'm going to kill myself? It happened quickly. It was a storm. It was just a barrage of punches and that type of thing to just beat the person to the point they didn't want to live anymore. Also, if you know somebody who you think fits that parameter, then try to help them if you can, because once you kill yourself, you dead. Ronnie and Tommy and all those guys, they've been dead for years, and they're going to stay dead. And everything that I experienced, I moved to Virginia and married a good woman and had good times and went to Busch Gardens 100 times. I was around to see my mother and father into their old age and be there to help them in their old age. That wouldn't have happened if I'd have killed myself. I actually would. I don't have a big fear thing. I just don't fear things. But when I thought of the hell I'd put my mother and father through, if that would have been a successful attempt on my life, it made my blood run cold. It scared me it scared me like nothing I'd ever known. And I was so happy that Bob, Reitenauer of Akron, Ohio, called help for me, was there, heard me, helped me. I'd love to see the guy today and tell him, you know, you intervened in a part of my life that was crucial, but even with the internet, I can't find the guy. So in the wild chance it's you're watching this, Bob, wow, thank you, and comment and I'll get a hold of you. So I said all that to say this. You have to understand that there are guidelines for proper mental health. Since I'm, you know, putting my cards on the table, I was as crazy a person as you'd ever meet. When you met me in my 20s, early 30s, you would have said, man, this guy's a maniac. Okay, this guy is a maniac. And I was. But I didn't want to be a maniac. So when I returned to life, which in itself was a shock, when I became conscious again in the hospital with them sewing me up and all that, that was quite an experience because I thought I was dead. And here I am alive again. Quite a shock. So start reading about, like I said, Dispenza and Dr. Bruce Lipton and people of that nature that talk about how you feel, why you feel that way, what you can do. You know, I could go on about meditation and all the things I've done in my life, but what worked for me may not work for you. I think meditation works for everybody. So I believe the suicide is from a busted spirit and a fatigued mind. You heal the spirit, you rest that mind for a while and start to enjoy the life that you have. You'll never think about taking it. It's a cascading thing. It's like boom, boom, one punch ain't no big deal, but you know, you throw a whole bunch of them, they add up. So what I'm saying is this. If you're not feeling good, if you're heartbroken, if you've got alcohol problems, drug problems, something that's grinding you down, somehow deal with your problem, whatever, however it works for you. But now you got to keep your eye on the trap door, because you are building a trap door. And all of a sudden your life is gone. You didn't even have anything to do with it, really. Because I know when I did what I did, it really was surreal. It's not like I actually decided to do it and did it. It was the craziest thing that ever happened to me. I did it, but you know, I would have never done it if I'd have thought about it. Stay alive. And the best caution in this life is information. And that information is I'm trying to give you right now. You know, there's so many different ways you can help yourself: meditation, exercise, or nutriment. God, the list is endless. But first, you gotta recognize that if your life ain't going the way it's supposed to, then who's running the show? Probably the past, right? You're either defined by the future or you're defined by the past. You know, the guys who sleep in their lab coats, they say 90% of what you thought today, you thought yesterday. And the subconscious mind has but one edict in its existence: does that make every day look the same? The repetition of days, you know, you get comfortable. Even the guy said, I'm miserable, but I'm comfortable. I'm used to it. I myself, my personal belief is that being here and now is the only thing that's going to save you. Because regret of the past and fear of the future, when they become thieves of the pleasure of the present, and it happens to a lot of people, the moment you think about something that happened in the past, you're in the past. And a lot of these brainiacs say that half of what you remember didn't even happen to begin with. That you modify your memories every time you go back to them. That some memories become schemas or actual architectural structures in your neural net. That don't sound comfortable, does it? But my intention, no matter how successful I might be with this, if you're having a hard time in your life, watch out for that trap door. Prepare for it. somehow give yourself a trigger when your mind says, hey, go jump off a roof or hang yourself or whatever. You got to stop right there. And if you're not prepared for it, it's like a sucker punch. You'll just die. But if you're used to the sucker punch, or you're looking for it now, you know, am I going to slide off that way? Then when it happens, you go, oh, wait a minute, you know, hold on, I've been waiting for this. Right? This is the trap door that I fall through and die. Okay, I got to back up. I got to slap myself in the face, pour beer on my head. Well, I got to do something here to break this. Because whatever it is, and I ain't smart enough to give you a proper nomenclature of what I'm trying to talk about. But it's some experience that goes on your brain that you'll actually take your own life. You may see yourself doing it, but it's not like you're really doing it. Isn't that scary enough? Okay. So, I hope that somebody gets a little good out of this information. And I know one thing, once you put a video on the internet, it goes on for a while, doesn't it? But the way I see it, life is good. Here and now, Master All in one's time says, I think something like this to me. He said, it's always disappointing to finally realize that you must give up your expectations rather than build on the bias of preconceptions. For those are illusions of desire with no pragmatic validity in reality. To be here and now is the only natural state of being. Because if you're here and now, that baggage that you've been pulling that's been weighing you down, you're pulling it maybe with a noose around your throat, that stops. The subconscious mind stops, and you take over. And not 95% of what you do is run by the subconscious. I mean, it is 95%. The only way you can be more conscious, more sentient, in my idea, is you got to be here and right now. I meditate every morning. I'm a martial arts guy. And I see it this way. The fatigued mind is your biggest enemy. Why don't you get up early in the morning? Just a break. I used to get up at the crack of noon, you know what I mean? But now I get up early in the morning. And when you meditate, and people, they turn off when you say the word meditate. Well, meditation is nothing more than losing your identity. You know? Like I said, your brain don't get no break when you're sleeping. I mean, God knows what's going on at that time. So when you meditate, I say to myself, I'm not Joe at that point. I'm a sentient consciousness having an experience in an infinite universe that some say is 150 million light years across. Sure sounds like a heck of a lot more exciting and mysterious than Joe at the Acme, right? So when you're in that, you're just pure consciousness. You don't have wants, desires, fears, anxiety. None of that plays. You're concentrating on your breath. You're running the chi, right? Well, you got 50 trillion cells. Every cell has 1.4 volts. How many volts is that in your body? No, it's 70 trillion. A lot of power, man. It's a lot of power. So when you give your mind that break, all of a sudden your immune system shuts on, and all the good chemicals for every negative thought you have, there's a negative vibration, a negative frequency, and also a cascadement of non-helpful chemicals that dump into your body. So if you're happy, even if you have to fake it to make it, I mean, then all of a sudden you get those endorphins, the serotonin, the dopamine. I get them in workouts in my morning, in my meditations. And you're just you. Just consciousness. And imagine a dial on the side of your head is like a frequency dial. Radio, right? You want to get in a radio station, you've got to go to the right frequency. Well, same thing here. You meditate, you get in the right frequency. Maybe throw in some of those in there. And all of a sudden, you are existing in a space that's so mysterious now. because it's void of all that conscious thinking and planning and all that stuff, right? And sometimes you'll get near bliss with this, right? It it's like a happiness that comes over you. The sheer excitement of life is really what it is, and you're really getting happy. You go, no, wait a minute, I can't get that happy. If I could be that happy, I should have been that happy last week. And I tell you, I don't know, this don't sound good. But then you let that happiness flow over you, and that happiness comes because now you're open to what's really happening. You're not worried about the future. You're not worried about the past. None of that. You're here, you're now, and you're alive. You've got to be excited about life. I mean, 156 trillion light years across? Are you kidding me? And plus, we live in a time that was absolute science fiction. I'm almost 70. I started out with 3, 5, and 8 in UHF, man. Now there's so many. It takes you an hour to actually just see how many movies are on tonight. And that's not counting Netflix. I'm a big fan of the workout. I've never seen anybody walk into a kung fu school or a karate school and go, boy, am I depressed. I've never seen it. So I've been working out all my life, last 43 years. And I miss 1-2 days a month. But that's why at 69 years old, I do a workout in the morning that would have burned me down when I was 30 years old. To finish this up, what I'd like to say to you, if you're having a hard time's in. Just time, just the passage of time is remarkable. The passage of a time is kind of an eraser, you know what I mean? It erases things and people out of your life. But you have to somehow come to the conclusion that to be happy in life is up to you. There's an old saying, you're only happy as you allow yourself to be. Well, that's true. I spent so many of my years of my life frustrated, drunk, and waste all those years. But nobody's perfect. I mean, we're all human, right? So if you've done things you're not proud of, it doesn't mean you have to repeat them, right? So take it from a guy who the trouble I had with alcohol was the jars were too small they came in, and Camels were too short. This was my thinking, right? But you'd be amazed when you quit drinking alcohol and you quit the drugs and you actually sober up. I mean, 30 days down the road, your brain starts to dry out. You'll say, damn, that crap had quite an effect on me. Maybe more than I even thought. So if you're in a bad situation, lay off the drugs, get a sober mind, and deal with your problems in a sober mind. Don't let the stress in your situation, coupled with drunk and high and all that crap, kill you, right? Because I guarantee you, like in my case, I got through that because of a guy named Bob Breitner, right? And the life I've had since then, the first year after that, a little rocky. But the rest of it, I've enjoyed it big time. I've traveled all over the country. I've lived in 8 different states. I sold timeshare real estate on ocean fronts. I mean, I worked at places that people save up all year to go to. And that's where I work week in, month in, year out. If I would have died in Akron, Ohio, none of these experiences, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I've been married for 39 years. None of this would have happened if Bob Breitner hadn't found me. So be on guard. I'm just saying this to you to try to help you. Right? I went to the emergency room the other day and I had a problem, and they did a CAT scan on my head, and they said I made medical history. So they did a CAT scan and didn't find any evidence of a brain. I said my wife would accuse me of that for some time. No, in all seriousness, I had a little dizziness, thought I might have had a stroke, which I didn't think so. But, you know, when you're waiting for the results of those type of tests, they can be life-altering. That's why I'm doing this video right now. Because yesterday, when the doctor walked in, he could have said, man, you've got a glioblastoma that's metastasized, you know, it's unoperable, goodbye. Or you've got a lesion or a bleed or an aneurysm. But they didn't find anything. Now, and I said, now what was it they did? Okay, you got three months to live. Right? This video is something I want to leave behind me. Because I don't hear people talking about that, right? Have you ever heard anybody who talks about suicide talk about what I've been talking about? I think if I'd heard a lot of it, I wouldn't have made this video. Okay, here's how this works. No matter what you think right now, life is worth living. You can forgive yourself. You can change your behavior, but you have to sober up, at least give your mind some sleep and lack alcohol and drugs. Let your mind dry out for 30 days. And I think the chance of you killing yourself at that point is going to go down incredibly. And I do have a PhD, which is a public high school diploma. So, what are you going to listen to, right? Okay, I wish you all the best of luck. Life is worth living. Hang in there. But whatever you do, if you're having a bad time, watch out for that trap door, okay?